Okay. Good morning or good afternoon, football fans. Big Al here on this Tuesday, October 29th, 2024, and welcome back to another edition of the week that was. As we'll be taking a look at the individual and team statistical numbers from week number 8 of the 2024 NFL season, including the Vikings and Rams on Thursday night, the Cowboys and Niners on Sunday night, the Giants and Steelers from Monday night, as well as the Ravens at the Browns, the Chiefs at the Raiders, and the battle of the top two players taken in the 2024 NFL Draft as the Bears faced off with the Commanders among all the 16 games from this past week. I'll also tell you how I did with my picks, both straight up and against the spread. And at the end, we'll have our Week 9 power rankings. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. Before we get started, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. And here we go with the Week 8 edition of the week that was. And we're going to begin on Thursday night, where the Los Angeles Rams defeat the Minnesota Vikings 30-20. LA improves its record to 3-4 on the 2024 season, while the Vikings, after a 5-0 start, have dropped back-to-back games. They are now 5-2. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford was 25 of 34 for 279 yards with 4 touchdowns and 1 interception and a QB rating of 124.5. He ran 3 times but for -4 yards. Leading the LA ground attack was Kyren Williams, 23 carries, 97 yards at 4.2 yards per run. Both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp returned for the Rams in this game. Nacua was the leading receiver, 7 catches, 106 yards on 9 targets. Kupp had 5 catches, 51 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Demarcus Robinson finished with 2 catches, 35 yards, both catches going for touchdowns on 3 targets. And in addition to his rushing numbers, Kyren Williams had 5 receptions for 19 yards and a receiving touchdown on 7 targets. No field goals for Joshua Carty, 4 for 4 on extra points. Ethan Evans, 3 punts, averaging 42.7. His long punt was 45 with 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. Kobe Durant and Darius Williams led the LA Rams defense with 5 solo tackles apiece. Kobe Turner had 6 tackles, 3 solo and 3 assists. Omar Speights, he had 4 total tackles. Christian Rosemoon has 6 total tackles, including 2 solo. Michael Hoch had 4 tackles and half a sack. Jarrett Verse had 3 tackles and 1.5 sacks. And Byron Young finishes, I can get that back there we go, with 2 solo tackles and a sack for the Rams. For the Minnesota Vikings, Sam Darnold was 18 of 25, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, QB rating of 128.8, plus 3 rushes for 6 yards. Aaron Jones, 19 carries, 58 yards. As far as the receivers, Justin Jefferson, 8 for 115 on 9 targets. Aaron Jones added 2 catches and 37 yards on 2 targets with his rushing numbers. Josh Oliver, 2 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. Jordan Addison, he finishes with 2 catches, 16 yards on 3 targets. Jalen Nailor, 2 catches, 16 yards on 4 targets. And Trent Sherfield had a touchdown catch in this game for Minnesota. Will Reichert finished 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 35. 2 for 2 on extra points. Ryan Wright had 3 punts averaging 50.3. His long was 61. All 3 punts inside the 20-yard line. Leading the way for the Vikings defense, you've got Ivan Pace with 13 total tackles. Harrison Smith, as I call him, the assassin, he had 8 tackles. Andrew Van Ginkel, 7 tackles. Stephon Gilmore had 5 tackles and a pass defense. Byron Murphy Jr., 4 solo tackles, 2 passes defense, and an interception. Joshua Metellus had 7 total tackles. And Cameron Bynum also had 7 total tackles plus a pass defense for the Vikings. Total yards 386 for the Rams, 276 for the Vikings. Passing yards 279 for LA, 212 for Minnesota. And rush yards are 107 for Los Angeles and 64 for Minnesota. The Rams had 26 first downs versus 17 for the Vikings. LA 4 of 10 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down. And Minnesota 2 for 7 on third down, no fourth downs. 9 penalties, 50 yards for the Vikings, 3 sacks taken for 28. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts. 6 penalties, 40 yards for the Rams. No sacks taken, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 3 punts. Time of possession favored LA, 33 minutes, 37 seconds versus 26 minutes and 23 seconds for Minnesota. Closing line was Minnesota minus 1.5, and the over-under closed at 60.5. I took the Vikings to win and to cover, and I lost both those picks. So out of the gate, I am 0-1 both ways. Moving to the Sunday portion of the schedule, and we'll start off with one of the many surprises in this early window as the Arizona Cardinals go to Miami and defeat the Dolphins 28-27, ruining the return of Tua Tagovailoa. The Cardinals are now at 4-4 on the season, while the Dolphins dropped to 2-5. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Arizona Cardinals. Good game for Kyler Murray, 26 of 36, 307 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a QB rating of 116.3, plus 5 rushes for 19 yards. James Conner had his 20 rushes, but he was limited to 53 yards, and he did score a touchdown, plus he had 2 catches for 16 yards on 3 targets. Leading receivers for the Cardinals include Trey McBride, 9 catches, 124 yards on 11 targets. Marvin Harrison Jr., 6 catches, 111, and a touchdown on 7 targets. Michael Wilson, 5 catches, 31 yards on 6 targets. Chad Ryland in for the injured Matt Prater. He was 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 57 and 2 for 2 on extra points. And Blake Gilligan, 3 punts averaging 53.3. Long punt was 60 with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Your leaders on defense include Jalen Thompson with 11 total tackles, Budda Baker with 12 tackles and a pass defense, Kazir White with 7 tackles and a pass defense. Max Milton finished with 8 tackles. Mack Wilson Sr., he had 4 total tackles. Dante Stills finished with 4 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. And that's pretty much it for the Cardinals in this one. For the Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, who missed the last 4 games due to a concussion, he has not played since the Thursday night game against the Bills all the way back in Week 2, made his return, finished 28 of 38 for 234 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception, QB rating of 97.9, plus 3 rushes for 13 yards. Devin Achane led the Miami ground attack with 10 carries, 97 yards. Raheem Mostert, 9 carries, 19 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. On top of that, Achane also had 6 catches for 50 yards and a receiving touchdown on 8 targets. As we transition to the receivers, Tyreek Hill, 6 catches, 72 yards on 9 targets. Jalen Waddle, 4 for 45 on 6 targets. Jonnu Smith, 4 catches, 20 yards on 6 targets. And Alec Ingold had 3 catches, 19 yards on 3 targets. Jason Sanders, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 53, 3 for 3 on extra points. And Jake Bailey, 2 punts averaging 46. His long punt was 56 with 1 touchback and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Leading the Dolphins defense, you've got David Long Jr., 9 total tackles. Jordan Brooks also with 9 total tackles. Javon Howard had 4 solo tackles. He injured his knee in this game, and he's not expected to miss significant time or undergo surgery. We'll see if he plays next week against the Bills. Cam Smith also had 4 solo tackles. Jordan Poyer, 8 total tackles and a pass defense. And you've got the ageless Calais Campbell with 5 tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense for the Dolphins. Total yards for Arizona, 389, Miami, 377. Passing yards advantage Cardinals, 307-227, but the Dolphins held the edge in rushing, 150 yards to 82. Both teams finished with 22 first downs. Both teams were pretty good on third down rather. The Cardinals were 7 of 13. Miami was impressive, 11 of 15 on third down. 4 penalties, 29 yards for the Cardinals, no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts. Long story short, the Cardinals took care of the football in this game. 2 penalties, 15 yards for the Dolphins, 1 sack taken for 7, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 2 punts. So it looks like both teams took care of the ball pretty well in this game. Time of possession, slight advantage to Miami, 30 minutes, 31 seconds. Arizona, 29 minutes, 29 seconds in time of possession. Closing line is Miami minus 3.5, over under 46.5. I did pick the Dolphins to win and cover, and I lost both those picks, so I am off to an 0-2 start, both straight up and against the spread. Alright, next up, you've got the Atlanta Falcons beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the second time in 4 weeks, 31-26 the final, as they will sweep the season series. Atlanta takes over sole possession of first place in the NFC South at 5-3, while the Buccaneers drop to 4-4, and they have some injury problems on that team. We'll start with individual numbers for the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins, probably one of his best games, if not his best game as a Falcon. 23 of 29 for 276 with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. Solid QB rating of 145.9 plus 3 rushes for 16 yards. The ground game was somewhat limited for Atlanta. Bijan Robinson, 13 carries, 63 yards, and Tyler Algier, 12 carries, 33 yards. Darnell Mooney led the way for the Falcons receivers. 5 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. Kyle Pitts, 4 for 91 and 2 touchdowns on 5 targets. And Bijan Robinson added 6 catches, 37 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 6 targets. And Drake London had 4 grabs for 34 on 6 targets. Younghoe Koo was 1 for 2 on field goals. Long was 39, 4 for 4 on extra points. And Bradley Pinion, 3 punts averaging 42.7. Long punt was 46 with no touchbacks and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Caden Ellis led the Atlanta Falcons defense with 11 total tackles. A.J. Terrell had 7 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Nate Landman, 7 total tackles and a forced fumble. Next is Mike Hughes with 6 total tackles. Jesse Bates had 5 tackles, a forced fumble, a pass defense, and an interception. D. Alford had 5 total tackles. Richie Grant, 4 total tackles. And Clark Phillips III had 3 total tackles for Atlanta. On to the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield was 37 of 50 for 330 yards with 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. QB rating of 94.6. Plus 3 rushes for 11 yards. Not much to talk about for the ground attack by the Buccaneers. Bucky Irving led the way with 9 carries, 44 yards. Rachaad White, 6 for 29. Leading receivers for Tampa Bay are Cade Otton, 9 catches, 81 yards, 2 scores on 10 targets. Raheem Jarrett, 3 catches on 3 targets for 58 yards. Bucky Irving added 7 grabs for 40 on 7 targets. Rachaad White added another 5 catches for 38 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets. Jalen McMillan, 4 catches, 35 yards on 7 targets. And Trey Palmer, 2 catches, 29 yards on 2 targets. So despite missing both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, the Bucs were pretty competitive in this game. Chase McLaughlin, 1 for 1 on field goals, longest 52, 3 for 3 on extra points. And Trenton Gill, 1 punt for 42 yards. Chris Eisen, switching over to the defense, had 9 total tackles. Lavonte David, 8 total tackles. Vita Vea, 5 tackles. KJ Britt was the leading tackler for Tampa Bay. He had 10 total tackles, including 3 solo. Antoine Winfield had 3 tackles, or rather 7 tackles, including 3 solo. CJ Brewer, probably the defensive player of the game for Tampa Bay, 3 tackles and 2 sacks. Total yards, there were a bunch of them in this game. 432 for the Buccaneers, 394 for the Falcons. Passing yards favored Tampa, 330 to 265. Rush yards favored Atlanta, 129 to 102. You had 24 first downs for the Buccaneers, 20 for the Falcons. And both were good on 3rd down in this game. 6 of 12 for Atlanta, 9 of 14 for Tampa. 4th downs, the Falcons 2 for 2, and the Buccaneers 1 for 2. 4 penalties to 43 yards for the Falcons, 2 sacks taken for 11, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts. 6 penalties, 45 yards for the Buccaneers, no sacks taken, 1 lost fumble, 2 interceptions, and 1 punt. Time of possession, Buccaneers 32 minutes, 34 seconds. Falcons 27 minutes and 26 seconds. Closing line was Atlanta minus 2.5. Over-under was 58.5, and they came very, very close to that number. I took the Falcons to win and cover, and that's my first win of the week against 2 losses straight up and against the spread. Alright. Our next surprise of the week is probably the biggest surprise of week 8, and that's the Baltimore Ravens going to Cleveland and losing to the Browns 29-24. The loss ended a 5-game win streak for Baltimore as they dropped to 5-3. Cleveland snapped a 5-game losing streak, and they will improve their record to 2-6. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Browns. Jameis Winston, 27 of 41, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, QB rating of 115.3, plus 2 rushes for 2 yards. Nick Chubb, in his second game back for Cleveland, had 16 carries, 52 yards. Donta Foreman had 5 rushes for 26. Cedric Tillman led the Cleveland receivers with 7 catches, 99 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 9 targets. Elijah Moore, he finished with 8 catches, 85 yards on 12 targets. Jerry Jeudy, 5 for 79 on 8 targets. And David Njoku, 5 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. Dustin Hopkins, 3 for 3 on field goals. Long was 48, 2 for 2 on extra points. Corey Bojorquez, 3 punts averaging 48.7. Long was 58, 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. Grant Delpit and Mohamed Diabate each had 9 total tackles for the Browns. Diabate also added a pass defense. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he had 7 tackles and a sack, but unfortunately he would be carted off the field in this game. After suffering a neck injury. That was pretty scary for the Browns. Ogbo Okoronkwo. Again, that's Ogbo Okoronkwo. 5 total tackles and a sack. Martin Emerson Jr. had 4 solo tackles and a pass defense. Devin Bush, 5 total tackles, and Juan Thornhill had 4 tackles and a pass defense. Zadarius Smith, a topic of trade talks potentially. He has 4 tackles and a sack for the Browns. For the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, 23 of 38, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 101.8 QB rating, plus 8 carries for 46 yards. Derrick Henry led the way for the Ravens rushers. He had 11 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Not much involved in the receiving game, just 1 catch for 4 yards on his only target. Zay Flowers was heavily involved, with 7 catches, 115 yards on 12 targets. Isaiah Likely, 4 catches, 47 yards on 4 targets. Nelson Aguilar, 3 catches, 36 yards and a touchdown on 5 targets. And Mark Andrews, 5 for 36 and a touchdown, also on 5 targets. Justin Tucker, 1 for 2 on field goals. Long was 49, 3 for 3 on extra points. Jordan Stout, 4 punts, averaging 52.3. Long was 64, and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. I think my defensive player of the week is Kyle Hamilton. He had a solid game in defeat. 10 total tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and 2 passes defensed. Eddie Jackson had 10 total tackles and a pass defensed. Roquan Smith closes with 8 tackles. Brandon Steffens, 5 solo tackles. Trenton Simpson had 4 solo tackles. Jalen Armour Davis, 5 total tackles. And Ardarius Washington finishes with 3 solo tackles for the Ravens. Total yards, Cleveland 401, Baltimore 387. Passing yards favored the Browns 321 to 263. Rush yards favored the Ravens 124 to 80. Both teams with 22 first downs. Baltimore was 2 of 10 on 3rd down, 0 for 2 on 4th down. Cleveland was 8 of 15 on 3rd down. 7 penalties, 53 yards for the Ravens, 3 sacks taken for 26, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 4 punts. 7 penalties, 74 yards for the Browns, 2 sacks taken for 13 yards, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 3 punts. Time of possession, 31 minutes, 6 seconds for the Browns, 28 minutes, 54 seconds for the Ravens. Closing line was Baltimore minus 3.5, over under 36.5. I picked Baltimore to win straight up and against the spread. Lost both picks, so now both ways I am 1-3. Alright, the Green Bay Packers probably played their C game, but they won anyway against the slumping Jacksonville Jaguars 30-27. The Packers will improve to 6-2, staying in the hunt in the NFC North. And the Jacksonville Jaguars drop to 2-6. We'll begin with individual numbers for Green Bay, starting with Jordan Love. 14 of 22, 196 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 73.3 QB rating. And Malik Willis came in late, went 4 for 5 for 56 and a touchdown, and a 152.9 QB rating. Big game for Josh Jacobs, 25 for 127 and 2 touchdowns. Willis added 4 carries, 23 yards, and that's pretty much it for the rushing numbers for the Pack. Tyler Kraft led the Packers receivers, 3 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. Romeo Doubs, 3 for 72 on 6 targets. Jaden Reed, he had 2 catches, 55 yards on 3 targets, and all 3 averaged over 20 yards a catch. 26-yard average for Kraft, 24 for Doubs, 27.5 for Reed. Christian Watson, 4 catches, 39 yards on 6 targets. Brandon McManus, 3 for 3 on field goals, Long was 38, 3 for 3 on extra points. Daniel Whelan, 5 punts, averaging 48.2, Long was 63, 3 punts inside the 20-yard line. Eric Wilson had 9 total tackles for the Green Bay defense. Edgerrin Cooper also had 9 total tackles, plus a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Isaiah McDuffie, 8 tackles. Xavier McKinney, 6 total tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Javon Bullard, 5 total tackles, and Keyshawn Nixon had 4 total tackles for the Green Bay Packers. For Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, 21 of 32, 308 yards, 2 touchdown passes and an interception, and a 104.7 QB rating, plus 4 rushes, 10 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Tank Bigsby had 18 carries, 78 yards. Byron Thomas Jr., the rookie, had 3 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. Brenton Strange with 5 catches, 59 yards on 5 targets. Christian Kirk, 2 catches, 59 yards on 5 targets. He would suffer a season-ending collarbone injury, and that's going to sideline him for the rest of 2024. So, big loss for Jacksonville, losing Christian Kirk. Parker Washington, 3 catches, 46 yards on 4 targets. He's expected to play a bigger role in the Jaguars' offense with the loss of Kirk. And Evan Ingram, 4 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. Cam Little, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 47, 3 for 3 on extra points. Logan Cook with 5 punts, averaging 59.6. Long was 73, 2 touchbacks, 2 inside the 20-yard line. Alright. Ventrell Miller had 7 total tackles. Foye Oluokun had 9 tackles, but he was placed on injured reserve, or he was taken off of injured reserve before the game. He had a foot injury, but he did play. Jeremiah Ledbetter, 6 total tackles. Darnell Savage, also 6 total tackles. And you had a half a sack and 4 total tackles from both Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen. Total yards, 422 for the Packers, 390 for the Jaguars. Passing yards were 299 to 252 Jacksonville. Rush yards 170 to 91 Green Bay. The Packers had 22 first downs, Jaguars 19. Both teams were not good on 4th down. They were a collective 4 for 20. 3 of 11 on 3rd down for the Packers, 1 for 9 for the Jaguars, and 1 for 1 on 4th downs on top of that for Jacksonville. 3 penalties, 20 yards for the Packers, 1 sack taken for no loss. No lost fumbles, 1 interception, 5 punts. 8 penalties, 59 yards for the Jaguars, 1 sack taken for 9, 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 5 punts as well. Time of possession, 34:09 for Green Bay, 25:51 for Jacksonville. Closing line was Green Bay minus 10.5, over under is 39.5. I took the Packers to win and to cover. Green Bay does win straight up, so now I'm 2-3 in those picks. But Jacksonville covered the lofty 10.5 point spread, losing by just 3. So I will lose the ATS pick there and drop to 1-4 in that area. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans. Houston completes the sweep of Indy, winning at home 23-20 and moving to 6-2 in the rather weak AFC South, as they are just dominating this division. The Colts, meanwhile, dropped to 4-4. Start with individual numbers for the Texans. C.J. Stroud, much better game than last week. 25 of 37, 285 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a 99.5 QB rating. Joe Mixon, 25 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown, plus 4 catches, 32 on 6 targets. Stephon Diggs, 5 catches, 81 yards on 9 targets. He did suffer a knee injury in this game. Dalton Schultz, 4 for 52 on 6 targets. Tank Dell, 4 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. And John Mechie III, 3 catches on 4 targets for 29. Kaimi Fairbairn, 3 for 3 on field goals, longest 35, 2 for 2 on extra points. And Tommy Townsend with 6 punts, averaging 42.8, long was 53, with 5 of those 6 punts going inside the 20-yard line. Will Anderson had 7 total tackles and a sack. Not to be outdone is Eric Murray, 7 total tackles and 3 passes defense. Neville Hewitt, he had 6 total tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Jalen Petrie, 4 total tackles, a pass defense, and an INT. Tim Settle Jr., 3 solo tackles and a sack. Kalen Bullock had 3 solo tackles. And Kamari Lassiter finishes with 3 total tackles and 3 passes defensed for the Texans. For the Indianapolis Colts, bad passing performance for Anthony Richardson. 10 of 32, 175 yards. He did throw a touchdown. He also threw an interception. Quarterback rating way down there at 48.3, plus 6 rushes for 45 yards. Jonathan Taylor shouldered the Colts rush attack, 20 carries, 105, and a touchdown. Here's a strange stat line for Josh Downs. No rush attempts, but 13 rushing yards. I wonder how you get those numbers. But he did lead Indianapolis in receiving. In fact, he was probably the only bright spot on this receiving corps. 4 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. Michael Pittman was held to 1 catch for 16 yards on 6 targets. Jonathan Taylor held to 1 catch for 12 yards on 1 target. Matt Gay, 2 for 2 on field goals. Long was 46, 2 for 2 on extra points. Rigoberto Sanchez, 6 punts, averaging 47.2. Long was 57, 2 punts inside the 20. Alright, Zaire Franklin led Indy's defense with 11 total tackles. Julian Blackman with 8 tackles. Kenny Moore with 7, 10 tackles and a pass defense by E.J. Speed. Then Jalen Jones had 6 total tackles and a pass defense. 7 total tackles, including 4 solo for Nick Cross. Grover Stewart had 6 tackles. And Deo Odeyingbo, 4 total tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And DeForest Buckner, who had an ankle injury going into this game, he had 3 total tackles and a sack for Indianapolis. Total yards, 363 for the Texans and 303 for the Colts. Passing yards were 267 to 140, Houston. Rush yards were 163 to 96, Indianapolis. The Texans had 21 first downs, Colts 17. 2 of 13 on third down for the Colts and 4 of 13 for the Texans. Indy was 2 for 2 as well on fourth down. 9 penalties, 57 yards for the Indianapolis Colts. 5 sacks taken for 35. 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, 6 punts. 5 penalties, 30 yards for the Houston Texans. 2 sacks taken for 18. 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and also 6 punts. Time of possession, 35 minutes, 20 seconds for the Houston Texans. This puts them in ball hawk territory. If you're new to the channel, a ball hawk is a team that possesses the ball for at least 35 minutes in a game, win or lose. And the Indianapolis Colts, 24 minutes, 40 seconds in time of possession. Closing line is Houston minus 4.5, over under is 51. I had the Texans both ways, but Houston wins straight up. Indy covers as the visiting underdog. So now I'm 3-3 straight up and 1-5 in my spread picks. That 1-5 number is not good. And it's only going to get worse from here because the New England Patriots upset the New York Jets 25-22, sending both teams to 2-6. Start with individual numbers for the New England Patriots. Drake May started the game. He was 3 of 6 for 23 yards, no touchdowns or interceptions, 59.7 passer rating, plus 3 rushes, 46 yards, and a rushing touchdown. The third overall pick in the draft would leave this game with a concussion, and he did not return. So enter Jacoby Brissett, 15 of 24, 132 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, quarterback rating of 77.1, plus 3 rushes for 11 yards. Ramondre Stevenson held to 48 yards on 20 carries, but he did score twice on the ground. Kayshon Boutte led the New England receivers with 3 catches, 46 yards on 6 targets. Hunter Henry, 5 for 45 on 6 targets. Tyquan Thornton, 2 catches, 20 yards on 3 targets. Ramondre Stevenson, 3 for 17 on 3 targets. Austin Hooper, 3 for 15 on 4 targets. And Demario Douglas, 2 catches, 12 yards on 3 targets. Joey Sly, 1 for 1 on field goals. Long was 23, 2 for 2 on extra points. Bryce Baringer, 5 punts, averaging 47.2. Long was 55, 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Okay, Marcus Jones had 6 total tackles and a pass defense. Jelani Tavai had 6 total tackles as well. Dedrick Wise, 4 solo tackles. Keon White, 4 solo tackles and a forced fumble. Christian Ellis, 9 total tackles, a sack and a pass defense. And Christian Gonzalez finishes with 6 tackles and a pass defense. Anthony Jennings, 6 total tackles. And Devon Godshaw, 3 total tackles for the Patriots. For the New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers was 17 of 28, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 111.2 QB rating. Alright, Breece Hall, 16 carries, 80 yards, led the Jets' rush attack. Braylon Allen, 12 for 32 and a rushing touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 5 catches, 113, and 8 targets to lead the New York receiving corps. Devontae Adams, 4 for 54 on 6 targets. Ty Conklin, 3 catches, 42 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. We'll get to him in just a sec. Greg Zuerlein was 1 for 2 on field goals. Long was 29, 1 for 2 as well on extra points. Thomas Morstead, 4 punts averaging 44.3. Long was 52, 1 touchback and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Jamian Sherwood led the New York Jets defense with 11 total tackles. Chaz Surratt, 5 solo tackles. Alright, you had 8 total tackles from Quincy Williams, 7 total tackles in a pass defense from Isaiah Oliver, sorry about that. Michael Carter II with 6 total tackles. Sauce Gardner, 5 tackles. Then DJ Reed with 4 tackles, and Quinnen Williams with 3 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Solomon Thomas added a forced fumble with his 4 tackles, and Javon Kinlaw had 2 tackles and half a sack for New York. Total yards, 336 for the Jets, 247 for the Patriots. Passing yards, 224 for the Jets, 136 for the Patriots. And rush yards were 112 New York and 111 New England. Jets had 22 first downs. The Patriots had 19. New York 4 for 10 on third down. Patriots 7 for 15. And 1 for 1 on fourth down. The Jets had 8 penalties for 55 yards, 1 sack taken for 9. No lost fumbles or interceptions, and 4 punts. The Patriots had 5 penalties for 50 yards, 2 sacks taken for 19. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 5 punts. Time of possessions nearly split down the middle. Advantage goes to the Patriots at 30 minutes 26 seconds versus 29 minutes 34 seconds for the Jets. Closing line was New York minus 8.5, over under 47.5, and they barely missed that total by that half point. I took the Jets to win and cover, lost both picks, so now I am 3-4 straight up, 1-6 ATS. Next, you've got the Philadelphia Eagles, who came into Sunday's game with the Cincinnati Bengals with a 3-9-2 all-time record and a 0-4-1 all-time record in Cincinnati. Well, as far as the Eagles playing in Cincinnati, 6 times the charm. Jalen Hurts looked good, the defense looked awesome, and the Eagles win 37-17. And it's not only their first ever win against the Bengals in Cincinnati, it's their first ever win, or rather it's their first win against the Bengals since 2000. Philly stays in the running in that NFC East at 5-2. The Bengals just isn't their year. Their record falls to 3-5. Had Cincinnati won this game, they would have been back at 500. We'll start with individual numbers for the Philadelphia Eagles. What a game for Jalen Hurts. 16 of 20 for 236 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, QB rating of 132.5. Plus 10 rushes, 37 yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. Then you've got Saquon Barkley, who has been a godsend for Philadelphia. 22 carries, 108 yards, 1 catch, 3 yards on 1 target. Devontae Smith, 6 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. A.J. Brown, 5 for 84 on 6 targets. Grant Calcaterra, 3 catches, 58 yards on 3 targets. Jake Elliott, 3 for 3 on field goals, longest 49. 4 for 4 on extra points. Braden Mann, 1 punt for 52 yards, and that resulted in a touchback. Alright. Zach Bond, Philadelphia's leading tackler, added 12 more tackles on Sunday, plus a forced fumble. Nakobe Dean with 9 total tackles. Reed Blankenship, 8 tackles and a pass defense. Darius Big Play Slave, 4 solo tackles and a pass defense. Cooper DeJean, 3 tackles, all solo, and a pass defense. Brandon Graham playing in his final season with the Eagles. He'll be retiring at year's end. He had 2 solo tackles and a forced fumble. Oren Burks also had 2 solo tackles and a forced fumble. And Quinyon Mitchell, the other rookie great on this Eagles defense, had 2 tackles, both solo. And you added 1 pass defense each from Isaiah Rodgers and Nolan Smith, plus a half a sack. C.J. Gardner-Johnson added a pass defense and an interception. And Milton Williams had a half a sack for Philadelphia. For the Cincinnati Bengals, whose struggles continue here in 2024, Joe Burrow was 26 of 37 for 234 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a QB rating of 84.7, plus 3 carries for 15 yards. Not much to talk about with this ground attack for Cincy. Chase Brown was held to 12 carries, 32 yards, but he did score a rushing touchdown. Leading receivers for the Bengals are Mike Gesicki, 7 for 73 yards on 8 targets. Jamar Chase, 9 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown on 11 targets. Gesicki had 8 targets in the game, by the way. You got 1 catch, 41 yards for Jermaine Burton on 3 targets. Eric All Jr., 2 catches, 32 yards on 2 targets. And Zach Moss, 4 for 28 on 4 targets, plus his 5 rushes for 11 yards. Evan McPherson, 1 for 2 on field goals, long was 27, 2 for 2 on extra points, and there were no punts for the Bengals. Cam Taylor-Britt led Cincinnati's defense with 9 total tackles and a pass defense. You had 5 solo tackles for Sam Hubbard, 9 total tackles for Jermaine Pratt. B.J. Hill, 6 total tackles. Sheldon Rankins with 3 solo tackles. Geno Stone, 5 total tackles. Trey Hendrickson had 4 total tackles, as did Miles Murphy. Logan Wilson did add a pass defense to go along with his 7 total tackles for the Bengals. Total yards, Philly 397, Cincinnati 280. Passing yards favored the Eagles 236 to 222. Rush yards also favored Philly 161 to 58. The Eagles had 24 first downs. The Bengals had 18. Philly was 6 of 11 on third down. Cincinnati was even better. They were 10 for 13. On fourth down, the Eagles were 1 for 1 and the Bengals were 0 for 1. 4 penalties, 40 yards for Philadelphia, no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and the game's only punt. 1 penalty, 3 yards for the Cincinnati Bengals, 1 sack taken for 12, 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and they had no punts on their side. Time of possession, Philadelphia 31-48, Cincinnati 28-12. Closing line was Cincinnati minus 4.5. Over under was 42.5. Now I did take the Bengals based on the history between these two teams, and I lost both picks. So halfway through the rundown, I have a 3-5 straight up record and a 1-7 ATS record. But I'm kind of glad that I took the loss here, betting against my Eagles. If you are joining us late, you're watching the week that was, as we look at the individual and team statistical numbers from week 9, or rather week 8 of the National Football League's 2024 campaign, plus how I'm doing on my picks straight up and against the spread. I update the numbers after every game read. And stay tuned till the end for the Week 9 Power Rankings. Those are coming up later. Now we're getting back to the recap and wrapping up the early portion of the game. The Detroit Lions proving you don't need a lot of offense to put up a big number. And that's what they did in their 52-14 beatdown of the Tennessee Titans. The Lions still hold the NFC's best record at 6-1, while the Tennessee Titans sit with the AFC's worst record at 1-6. Alright, individual numbers for the Detroit Lions, and Jared Goff is as accurate as they come. 12 of 15 for just 85 yards, but 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. Quarterback rating of 129.9. Then you've got Hendon Hooker, 2 for 3 for 6 yards and a 70.1 QB rating. David Montgomery, yes, he's a running back. He attempted a pass and completes it for 3 and a touchdown, and at a 118.8 QB rating. As for his rushing numbers, he had 9 carries, 33 yards, and a rushing touchdown. And he also had a reception for 5 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs had a big game. 11 carries, 127, and a rushing touchdown. And 1 catch, 6 yards on his only target. Leading receiver is Sam Laporta. 6 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. Khalif Raven, 2 for 14 and a touchdown on 2 targets. Brock Wright, former Notre Dame standout. 1 catch, 8 yards, and a touchdown on his only target. Amon-Ra St. Brown held the 2 catches, 7 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets. Jake Bates continues to be the talk of the NFL here in this first half of the season. 1 for 1 on field goals, his longest 51, and 7 for 7 on extra points. He is now 11 of 11 on field goals and 27 of 28 on extra points for the Lions. Jack Fox, 5 punts averaging 61, long was 67, 3 punts inside the 20. Terrion Arnold led the Lions defense, 7 tackles and a pass defense. All 7 tackles were solo. Jack Campbell was actually the team's leading tackler. He had 11. 6 solo tackles for Brian Branch. 6 solo tackles and a sack for Alex Anzalone. Kirby Joseph, 6 total tackles, 2 passes defensed, and an interception. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, 3 total tackles. And Carlton Davis, he had 2 solo tackles and a pass defense. Then there's Amik Robinson, 2 solo tackles and 2 forced fumbles for the Lions. For the Tennessee Titans, Mason Rudolph was in at quarterback for the injured Will Levis. Rudolph was 22 of 38 for 266, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, and a 66.3 passer rating, plus 4 rushes, 29 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Tony Pollard, 20 carries, 94 yards. Julius Chestnut, 7 carries, 32 yards. Leading the way for the Titans receivers is Calvin Ridley, 10 catches, 143 yards on 15 targets. Nick Westbrook-Akine had 2 catches, 39 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. Josh Wiley, 2 catches, 33 yards on 2 targets. Tony Pollard added 3 catches for 23 on 4 targets. Tyler Boyd, 3 grabs, 14 yards on 6 targets. And Chig Okonkwo, 2 catches, 14 yards on 5 targets. Nick Folk, no field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. Wow, it's his 17th year in the league. Ryan Stonehouse, 6 punts, averaging 49.3. Long was 62. 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. Stonehouse is one of the best punters in football, in my opinion. Okay. Quandre Diggs had 7 total tackles. Amani Hooker also had 7 total tackles. Jack Gibbons, 8 total tackles. That actually led Tennessee in that department. Arden Key, I listed him as a nominee for Defensive Player of the Week. He had 6 total tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. Jeffrey Simmons finished with 4 total tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. And Roger McCreary had 3 solo tackles and a sack for the Titans. Total yards, listen to this: 416 for the Titans, 225 for the Lions. That goes back to my point about the Lions turning little offense into a big number in terms of points. Tennessee outgained Detroit through the air 258-61. But the Lions had the slight rushing advantage with 164 rush yards to 158 for the Titans. Tennessee had 23 first downs versus Detroit's 17. Both teams pretty much struggling on third down. 3 of 11 for the Titans, 3 of 9 for the Lions. Tennessee was also 1 of 2 on fourth down. 8 penalties, 60 yards for the Titans, 1 sack taken for 8, 2 lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 6 punts. 3 penalties, 29 yards for the Lions, 4 sacks taken for 33, no lost fumbles or interceptions, and 5 punts. The Tennessee Titans go into ball hog territory as they had the ball for 35 minutes, 37 seconds versus 24-23 for the Lions. Closing line was Detroit minus 15.5. That's pretty much a college-style spread. And the over-under was 69.5. For some strange reason, it closed like that. I took the Lions straight up and against the spread, and I won both picks. So now I am 4-5 straight up and 2-7 in my ATS picks. And this was my lock of the week as well. I am now 6-2 with my locks of the week. Moving on to the late games, and we'll start with the Buffalo Bills destroying the Seattle Seahawks 31-10 to move to 6-2 on the season, while the Seahawks fall to 4-4. We'll start with individual numbers for the visiting Bills. Good game for Josh Allen, 24 of 34, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 102.9 QB rating. Plus 7 rushes for 25 yards. So pretty much he accounted for 308 yards of the Bills' offense. James Cook, 17 carries, 111, and 2 touchdowns. Ray Davis was held to 6 carries, 29 yards. Khalil Shakir led the Bills' receivers. 9 catches, 107 on 10 targets. Rookie Keon Coleman, 5 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. Dawson Knox, 2 for 50 on 2 targets. And Dalton Kincaid, 4 catches, 31 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. I also want to add James Cook onto this too. 3 catches, 22 yards on 3 targets. Tyler Bass was 1 for 1 on field goals, longest 27, and 4 for 4 on extra points. Sam Martin, 3 punts averaging 49, his long was 58, 1 touchback, or rather 1 inside the 20. He had no touchbacks. Okay. Taron Johnson actually led the Buffalo Bills with 8 tackles. Rasul Douglas had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Balin Spector had 5 total tackles. DeMar Hamlin, 4 tackles. Greg Rousseau, 4 tackles, 2 passes defensed. Christian Benford, 4 tackles. And Cam Lewis had 4 tackles and a pass defense. Taylor Rapp, meanwhile, had 5 tackles for the Bills. For Seattle, Geno Smith, 21 of 29, 212 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 78.5 passer rating, plus 5 rushes for 16 yards. Held to just over 3 yards per run. Leading receivers are Jackson Smith and Jigba, 6 catches, 69 yards on 7 targets. A.J. Barner, 2 catches, 34 yards on 2 targets. Kenneth Walker III was held to 9 carries, 12 yards, added 4 catches for 33 on 5 targets. Noah Fant, 3 catches, 22 yards on 4 targets. And Zach Charbonnet, 3 catches, 20 yards on 4 targets. Jason Myers, 1 for 1 on field goals, longest 38, 1 for 1 on extra points. Michael Dixon, 4 punts averaging 61.3, longest 68, 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. How about Ernest Jones? He was traded from the Rams to the Titans just days before the season started. And then the Titans ended up swapping him to Seattle for Jerome Baker. Jones made his Seattle debut, and he had 15 total tackles, including 7 solo. Next is Josh Jobe with 7 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Tyrell Dodson, 7 total tackles. Kobe Bryant, C-O-B-Y Bryant, 6 tackles and a pass defense. Devin Witherspoon, 5 total tackles. Byron Murphy, 4 total tackles. Reek Woolen, or the artist formerly known as Tariq Woolen, he had 4 tackles and a pass defense. Julian Love with 4 total tackles. Derek Hall, 3 solo tackles. And Roy Robertson Harris had 2 solo tackles and a pass defense. for the Hawks. Total yards, nearly 2-1 for Buffalo. 445 yards for the Bills, 233 for the Seahawks. The Bills had 281 passing yards and 164 rushing yards, while the Seahawks had 201 passing yards and 32 rushing yards. First downs, Buffalo 28, Seattle 17. That in itself is a football score. The Bills 8 for 15 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down, 1 for 7 on third down, and 0 for 1 on fourth down for Seattle. And you had 24 accepted penalties in this game. 13 by the Bills for 85 yards, 1 sack taken for no loss, no lost fumbles, 1 interception, and 3 punts. 11 for 82 yards for the Seahawks, 1 sack taken for 11, 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 4 punts. Time of possession, the Bills well into ball hawk territory at 38 minutes 3 seconds. Seahawks 21 minutes and 57 seconds. Closing line was Buffalo minus 5.5, over under 39.5. Okay, that means I took Buffalo straight up and against the spread, so I even my straight up record at 5-5, and my ATS record is now 3-7. Next, you have the Los Angeles Chargers and their underrated defense shutting down the New Orleans Saints 26-8. This puts the Chargers back above 500 at 4-3. And the Saints dropped to 2-6. Seems like that great start to the season for New Orleans was just ages ago. They of course won their first 2 games, and they dominated those first 2 games, scoring 91 points. Over their now 6-game losing streak, the Saints have scored a grand total of 94 points, including 8 on Sunday. Start with individual numbers for the Chargers. Justin Herbert, 20 of 32, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 111.3 QB rating, plus 4 rushes, 49 yards. J.K. Dobbins, 17 carries, 57 yards, and a rushing touchdown, and 4 catches for 11 yards on 7 targets. Ladd McConkey led the LA receivers with 6 catches, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 6 targets. Then there's Josh Palmer, 2 for 72 on 4 targets. Will Dissly, 5 catches, 41 yards on 7 targets. And Jalen Reagor, 2 catches, 35 yards on 2 targets. Cameron Dicker, 2 for 2 on field goals, longest 46, 2 for 3 on extra points. And J.K. Scott, 6 punts, averaging 57.3, longest 67, half of those 6 punts inside the 20-yard line. Okay, leading the way for the Chargers defense is Deion Henley, 11 total tackles in a pass defense. Derwin James had 6 tackles. Aloy Gilman, 5 tackles. Cam Hart also had 5 tackles. Bud Dupree, 4 solo tackles and a sack. Tarheeb Still, 3 solo tackles. Elijah Moden, 5 tackles. Denzel Perryman, 3 tackles. Morgan Fox also with 3 tackles. And for the New Orleans Saints, they started the game with Spencer Rattler, 12 of 24 for 156 with no touchdowns or interceptions and a 70.8 passer rating. He would end up being benched for Jake Haener, former Fresno State Bulldog. 9 for 17 for 122, No touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 76.1 passer rating. So he was no better than Rattler. Taysom Hill attempted and completed a pass for 3 yards and had a 79.2 QB rating. Hill also had 4 rushes, 20 yards, 2 receptions, 21 yards on 4 targets. Leading rusher for New Orleans is Alvin Kamara, 10 for 67. He also has 6 catches for 55 on 11 targets. Chris Olave, 8 catches, 107 on 14 targets. He had missed the last couple of games with a concussion, but he did return for this one. Juwan Johnson also had a concussion, cleared the league's concussion protocol, and he played, finishing with 3 catches, 48 yards on 4 targets. Blake Grupe, that's Grupe, 2 for 3 on field goals, longest 43, and no extra points. Matthew Hayball, 9 punts, averaging 48.6, long was 59, 2 touchbacks, 5 punts inside the 20-yard line. Alright. Pete Werner and Demario Davis each had 9 tackles to lead the Saints defense. The Honey Badger Tyrann Mathieu had 5 solo tackles. Jordan Howden with 5 total tackles. Kool-Aid McKinstry, this is the rookie from Alabama. He had 5 total tackles and a pass defense. Kalen Saunders, 4 total tackles and a sack. And Ugo Amadi had 3 solo tackles and a sack. Marshawn Lattimore with 2 tackles and a pass defense for the Saints. Total yards nearly split down the middle, with 378 for the Chargers and 366 for the Saints. Passing yards favored LA slightly, 256 to 249. Rush yards also favored LA slightly, 122 to 117. Los Angeles had 19 first downs, 15 for New Orleans. Both teams terrible on third down. 2 of 16 for the Saints, 3 of 12 for the Chargers. So collectively, that's 5 for 28. That's not good. 1 for 1 on fourth downs for the Saints, 0 for 1 for the Chargers. 7 penalties, 66 yards for New Orleans, 5 sacks taken for 32, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 9 punts. 4 penalties, 34 yards for LA, 3 sacks taken for 23, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 6 punts. Time of possession, 31 minutes, 8 seconds for the Chargers, 28 minutes, 52 seconds for the Saints. Closing line was LA minus 5.5. Over under was 35.5. I picked LA to win. Sorry, let me try that again. I picked LA to win and to cover, and I got both picks. So that's 6-5 straight up and 4-7 ATS. Alright, next up, the Denver Broncos doubled up the hapless Carolina Panthers 28-14. Denver remains second in the AFC West with a 5-3 record. Yeah, who saw that coming? The Carolina Panthers fall to an NFL worst 1-7. That's right, 1-7. Alright, individual numbers, starting off with the Denver Broncos. Pretty good game for Bo Nix. 28 of 37, 284 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, QB rating of 124.2. Courtland Sutton completed a pass attempt for 28 yards and a 118.8 QB rating. And Riley Dixon, this is the punter we're talking here, He completed a pass attempt for 3 yards and a QB rating of 79.2. Alright. Leading rusher is Jaleel McLaughlin, 8 for 47. Javonte Williams, 17 for 44. Bo Nix had 5 rushes, 4 yards, and a rushing touchdown in addition to his solid passing numbers. The aforementioned Courtland Sutton led Denver's receivers, 8 catches, 100 yards on 11 targets. Adam Troutman, 4 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. Devon Vele, 3 catches, 28 yards on 3 targets. Michael Burton, 1 catch, 28 yards on his only target. Lil Jordan Humphrey, 4 for 22 on 6 targets. McLaughlin also added a touchdown reception, as did Nate Atkins. Will Lutz, no field goals, 4 for 4 on extra points. And the aforementioned Riley Dixon, who completed a pass in this game, had 3 punts averaging 51, longest 60, with 1 touchback and 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading the Denver defense, you've got Brandon Jones with 12 total tackles. Justin Sternad, 7 total tackles. Jonathan Cooper, 5 tackles and a sack. Riley Moss with 5 tackles. Zach Allen, 3 solo tackles. Devin Key, he had 5 tackles. And Jaquan McMillan had 3 tackles, 1 pass defense, and an interception for the Broncos. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young is back under center for the Panthers, 24 of 37, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 76.9 QB rating, plus 3 rushes for 6 yards. Chuba Hubbard, 15 carries, 56 yards, 2 catches, 15 yards on 2 targets. Okay, Jalen Coker, 4 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. David Moore, 4 catches, 39 yards on 5 targets. Miles Sanders, 7 for 38 on 7 targets. And rookie Xavier Legette, 4 for 34 and a touchdown on 7 targets. Eddie Pinheiro, no field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. Johnny Hecker, 5 punts averaging 49.4, longest 53, 1 punt inside the 20. Mike Jackson had 10 tackles. Damani Richardson had 11 tackles. And Josie Jewell had 10 tackles, all leading the Panthers defense. Shy Tuttle, 7 tackles and a forced fumble. And Ashawn Robinson, 5 tackles and 2 sacks. Trevin Wallace, along with his 4 tackles, also had a pass defense for the Panthers. Total yards, an even 400 for Denver to 284 for Carolina. Passing yards, Broncos 298, Panthers 215. Rush yards, Denver 102, Carolina 69. 23 first downs for the Broncos to 16 for the Panthers. As for third downs, one team was bad, one team was really good. The bad third down team was Carolina. They went 5 of 14. The really good third down team was Denver, 11 of 17. Carolina was 1 for 4 on fourth down, and Denver was 1 for 2. 8 penalties, 49 yards for the Panthers, 2 sacks taken for 9, no lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 5 punts. 4 penalties, 43 yards for the Broncos, 2 sacks taken for 17, 2 lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts. Time of possession, 33 minutes, 10 seconds for the Broncos, 26 minutes, 50 seconds for the Panthers. Closing line was Denver minus 5.5. Over-under was 42.5. Took the Broncos straight up and against the spread. And I won both picks. So I am now 7-5 straight up, 5-7 against the spread. That brings us to our game of the week. And boy, it lived up to the hype. The Washington Commanders got a final play Hail Mary to defeat the Chicago Bears in dramatic fashion, 18-15. So the good times continue to roll in our nation's capital as the Commanders move to 6-2 and stay in front in the NFC East. Chicago with the loss drops to 4-3. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, who returned to this game after suffering a rib injury against Carolina last week, was 21 of 38 for 326 with a touchdown and no interceptions and a 92.7 QB rating. That touchdown was, of course, that game-winning Hail Mary. Daniels also had 8 rushes for 52 yards. Brian Robinson, 16 carries, 65 yards. Austin Eckler, 7 carries, 52 yards. Scary Terry McLaurin, regaining his scary moniker. He had 5 catches, 125 on 8 targets. Zach Ertz, 7 catches, 77 yards on 11 targets. Here's your hero of the day, Noah Brown. 3 catches, 73 yards, and the game-winning touchdown on 6 targets. Austin Seibert, 4 for 5 on field goals, longest 47, and no extra points. And Tress Way, 5 punts, averaging 42.8, longest 57, 2 punts inside the 20. Quan Martin led the Washington defense with 11 total tackles. The ageless Bobby Wagner had 7 total tackles. Frankie Louvu and Benjamin St-Juste had 6 total tackles each. Mike Sanderstil, 5 tackles. Deron Payne, 4 tackles and a sack for the Washington Commanders. And for the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, 10 of 24 for 131, no touchdowns or interceptions, 59.5 QB rating, plus 10 carries for 41 yards. DeAndre Swift had a great game for Chicago, 18 carries, 129, and a touchdown, and nothing receiving. Okay. Leading receivers were Rome Odunze, 3 catches, 41 yards on 6 targets. Keenan Allen, 2 for 39 on 7 targets. There's a little controversy surrounding him. Many Bears fans are upset at Keenan Allen due to the fact that he was smiling during that game-winning Hail Mary. So that's kind of got Bears fans a bit ruffled up a little. DJ Moore, 2 catches, 27 yards on 4 targets. Cairo Santos, no field goals, 1 for 1 on extra points. Torrey Taylor had 7 punts, averaging 48.7, long was 68, with 5 inside the 20-yard line. Alright, you had 9 total tackles and a pass defense from Tariq Stevenson. Elijah Hicks had 7 total tackles. TJ Edwards had 6 plus a sack. Tremaine Edmonds had 10 total tackles, which actually led the Bears defense. Gervon Dexter Sr. has 6 total tackles. Then there's Montez Sweat with 4 tackles and a sack. Josh Blackwell, 3 tackles and a pass defense. And Chris Williams, no relation to Caleb Williams, he had 3 solo tackles. Kevin Byard had 5 total tackles for the Bears. Total yards, Commanders 481, Bears 307. Passing yards were 313 to 111 for Washington. Rush yards were 186 to 168 for Chicago. The Commanders 23 first downs, Bears with 15. Big reason why Chicago lost this game, they were 2 for 12 on 3rd down, 0 for 1 on 4th down. Washington, meanwhile, was 5 of 15 on 3rd down. 8 penalties, 60 yards for the Bears, 2 sacks taken for 20, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 7 punts. 5 penalties, 30 yards for the Washington Commanders, 2 sacks taken for 13, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 5 punts. Time of possession, 32 minutes, 16 seconds for the Commanders versus the Bears, 27-44. Closing line was Washington minus 7.5. Over-under was 46.5. I took the Commanders to win straight up and to cover as the home underdog, but Chicago wound up covering the spread, losing by just 3. So with that, I go to 8-5 in my straight up picks, 5-8 in my ATS picks. The final Sunday afternoon game is the Kansas City Chiefs defeating the Las Vegas Raiders 27-20. So at 7-0, Kansas City remains the NFL's lone undefeated team. In fact, they now have a 12-game winning streak going back to Week 17 of 2023. Because remember, the last team to beat the Chiefs were the Raiders, and that's when they went into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day last year. Speaking of the Raiders, they will drop to 2-6 with the loss. Start with individual numbers for the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, 27-38, 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 96.6 QB rating. Plus 6 rushes, 17 yards. Leading the way for the Chiefs' ground attack is Kareem Hunt, 21 carries, 59 yards, and a touchdown. Plus 1 catch for 4 yards on his only target. Travis Kelce, 10 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown on 12 targets. Xavier Worthy, this is the speedster out of Texas. 4 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Next is Justin Watson, 3 for 33 on 3 targets. Samaje Perine, 2 catches, 30 yards on 2 targets. DeAndre Hopkins in his Chiefs debut. He was, of course, traded to Kansas City from Tennessee earlier last week. He had 2 catches, 29 yards on 3 targets. And Noah Gray, 3 for 23 on 3 targets. Harrison Butker was 2 for 2 on field goals, longest 42. 3 for 3 on extra points. Matt Araiza, 2 punts averaging 46 and that's Matt Araiza. 2 punts averaging 46.5. Long was 51 with 1 inside the 20-yard line. Nick Bolton once again paced this Chargers, or rather his Chiefs defense, with 9 total tackles. Drew Tranquil had 6 total tackles. Leo Chanel had 4 solo tackles. Both added a sack. Felix Anudite Uzoma. Try saying that 5 times fast. He had 4 total tackles, likewise with Justin Reed. Nazeez Johnson, 5 tackles. Trent McDuffie with 4 tackles. Meanwhile, Tershawn Wharton added a sack and a pass defense for KC. For the Las Vegas Raiders, Gardner Minshew, 24 of 30, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, QB rating of 117.9. He threw the ball well. Alexander Mattison held to 14 carries, 15 yards. And 5 catches for 29 yards on 5 targets. Brock Bowers, the big rookie tight end from Georgia, led the Vegas receivers with 5 catches, 58 yards on 5 targets. Jacoby Myers, after missing a few games, he returned to the Raiders lineup, had 6 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. DJ Turner, 4 catches, 28 yards on 4 targets. Oops, that's Amir Abdullah. I don't need him. And Trey Tucker finishes with 2 catches, 26 yards on 3 targets. Daniel Carlson, 2 for 2 on field goals, longest 54. 2 for 2 on extra points. AJ Cole, 2 punts averaging 64, longest 68. 1 touchback, 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Robert Spillane led the Las Vegas defense with 12 total tackles. Trevon Moehrig, 9 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Divine Diablo, 7 total tackles. Jack Jones, 5 tackles, 1 pass defense. Jacorian Bennett with 6 total tackles. Clavon Chaisson, 4 total tackles. And Nate Hobbs finishes with 4 total tackles and a pass defense. Tyree Wilson had a sack to go along with his 3 tackles for the Raiders. Total yards, Kansas City 334, Vegas 228. Passing yards 252 to 195 for the Chiefs. Rush yards, not a lot to come by in this game, 82 to 33 for KC. The Chiefs had 23 first downs, Raiders had 15. Kansas City really good on 3rd down, 12 of 16 with no 4th downs. Vegas was 6 of 13 meanwhile on 3rd down and 1 for 2 on 4th. 8 penalties, 55 yards for the Chiefs, 1 sack taken for 10, no lost fumbles, 1 interception and 2 punts. 5 penalties, 32 yards for Vegas, 5 sacks taken for 14, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 2 punts as well. Closing line, well, we'll get to that in a second. Time of possessions, 32 minutes, 30 seconds for the Chiefs. 27 minutes and 30 seconds for the Raiders. Now we can tell you the closing line was Kansas City -6. Over under is 47.5. I picked the Chiefs to win straight up. But I took Vegas with the points, and that was a pretty big mistake. Because this line was about 10 or 11 when the week started, and then it dropped all the way down to 6 at the close of this game. So therefore, I am now 9-5 straight up, but only 5-9 in my ATS picks. Alright, just 2 more games left until in the rundown, and we'll begin the end with Sunday Night Football, as the San Francisco 49ers, for the time being, saved their season with a 30-24 win over the rival Dallas Cowboys. San Francisco has forced a 3-way tie atop the NFC West at 4-4. They are tied with both Arizona and Seattle. Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys, their struggles continue. They fall to 3-4, and at this point may be a long shot to even make the playoffs. Individual numbers starting off with the 49ers. Brock Purdy was 18 of 26 for 260 yards, 1 touchdown pass, no interceptions, and a 114.3 QB rating, plus 8 carries, 56 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Isaac Guerendo had 14 carries, 85 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He of course would replace Jordan Mason, who went 6 carries, 18 yards, and that's it. Mason has a shoulder injury and did not return to this game. So that's why we had Guerendo running the ball for the most part. Deebo Samuel, 4 catches, 15 yards on 6 targets. Or 4 rushes, 15 yards, and his long one was 6. George Kittle had a great day on... George Kittle had a great game on National Tight Ends Day. 6 catches, 128 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. He is my offensive player of the week. Deebo, 4 catches, 71 yards on 7 targets. Ricky Pearsall, this is the rookie who was shot before the season, but good to see him back out there. 4 receptions, 38 yards, and 4 targets. Isaac Guerendo, 3 for 17 on 4 targets. Anders Carlson, 3 for 3 on field goals, 3 for 3 on extra points. Long field goal was 50. Mitch Wisnowski, 4 punts, 43 per punt. 45 is long, 1 inside the 20-yard line. Devondre Campbell had 7 total tackles. Charvarius Ward also with 7 total tackles. Let me get back in here. Diamador Lenore, busy night for him. 6 tackles, a forced fumble, pass defense, and an interception. Fred Warner with 8 tackles and a pass defense. And Jair Brown finishes with 5 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Renardo Green, 3 tackles and a forced fumble. And Nick Bosa, 3 tackles and a sack. For the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, 25 of 38, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, QB rating of 79.2. Plus 10 rushes, 34 yards, and a touchdown for Ezekiel Elliott, in which the Dallas Cowboys as a team continues to struggle running the football. CeeDee Lamb probably had his best game this year and one of his best against the Niners. 13 receptions, 146, and 2 touchdowns on 17 targets. Jalen Tolbert, 3 catches, 44 yards on 3 targets. Jake Ferguson, 6 for 23 on 8 targets. Cavante Turpin, 1 catch for 16 on 4 targets. And Dalvin Cook, who made his Cowboys debut, he was on the practice squad, but booted up to the starting roster for Dallas after Rico Dowdle came down with an illness this week and did not play. He had 1 catch for 10 yards on his only target. Brandon Aubrey, 1 for 1 on field goals. His long was a chip shot from 29. 3 for 3 on extra points. Brian Anger, 4 punts, 48.5 average. Long is 59. And 3 inside the 20. Amani Oruwari. I think I got his name right this time. He had 8 tackles in this game. Eric Kendricks led the team with 9 tackles. Trayvon Diggs had 5 tackles and a pass defense, and he was in the news after Sunday night's loss to the Cowboys. He went after a local Dallas reporter, telling him that you don't play the game or you don't know the game. Something to that effect. Because I think the reporter worked for WFAA in Dallas. So I say go to their website and try finding that story there. I'm pretty sure you'll find it. DeMarvion Overshown, 8 tackles and a sack. Jordan Lewis has 7 tackles. Malik Hooker, there's another hooker, he had 6 tackles. Chauncey Goldston had 5 tackles. Likewise for Donovan Wilson. And Carl Lawson had 3 tackles. Yeah, not much to talk about with this Cowboys defense. Total yards, San Francisco 469, Dallas 292. Passing yards, slight advantage to the 49ers, 246 to 236. Rush yards, big advantage to the 49ers, 223 to 56. That's nearly a 4-to-1 clip there. One more yard and it would be 4-to-1. 19 first downs for the Niners, 18 for the Cowboys. Dallas was 4 of 12 on 3rd down, 1 for 2 on 4th down. San Francisco 8 for 16 on 3rd down, 0 for 1 on 4th down. 6 penalties, 30 yards for the Cowboys, 2 sacks taken for 7, no lost fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 4 punts. 9 penalties, 73 yards for the Niners, 2 sacks taken for 14, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and another 4 punts. 33 minutes, 12 seconds time of possession for the Niners, 26 minutes, 48 seconds time of possession for the Dallas Cowboys. Closing line was San Francisco minus 2.5. Over under was 43.5. I picked the Niners to win straight up and against the spread. That makes me 10-5 straight up and 6-9 ATS. And our final game of the week is Monday Night Football, as the Pittsburgh Steelers continue their Monday night dominance at home, winning their 22nd straight home game on Monday night as they downed the New York Giants 26-18. With Baltimore's loss, Pittsburgh takes over sole possession of first place in the AFC North at 6-2, while the Giants sit in the bottom of the NFC East with a 2-6 record. So look at individual numbers for the Steelers. Another great outing for Russell Wilson. 20 of 28, 278 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a 114.9 QB rating, plus 3 rushes, 7 yards. Najee Harris also had a good game. 19 rushes, 114, and 3 catches, 17 yards on 4 targets. Jaylen Warren added 9 rushes for 46 and 2 catches for 13 on 3 targets. Great transition into the Steelers receivers led by George Pickens. 4 catches, 74 yards on 5 targets. Van Jefferson, 4 catches, 62 yards and 5 targets. Calvin Austin III, 3 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. And Pat Freiermuth, 2 catches, 19 yards on 2 targets. Chris Boswell, 4 for 4 on field goals, longest 31, 2 for 2 on extra points. And Corliss Waltman, 3 punts, averaging 43.7. Longest 55, and 2 punts inside the 20-yard line. I take that back. It's not Corliss Waltman. It's actually Corliss Waitman. I read it wrong. Sorry about that. TJ Watt is also... And I take that back. I think TJ Watt will be my defensive player of the week. He had 7 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. So yes, TJ Watt is my defensive player of the week for week number 8. Deshaun Elliott, 7 tackles and a pass defense. Joey Porter Jr., 8 tackles. Alex Highsmith, 4 solo tackles and 2 sacks. Patrick Queen, 8 tackles. Cam Hayward, 6 tackles and a pass defense. Some history for him. Last night was his 202nd game suiting up for the Steelers. That is the most of any Pittsburgh defensive player in team history. Congratulations, Cam Hayward. Beanie Bishop Jr., 5 tackles, pass defense, and an interception for the Steelers. And for the New York Giants, Daniel Jones is 24 of 38, 264 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 72.7 QB rating, plus 3 rushes for 1 yard. By the way, his primetime record is now 1-15, and he's dropped to 0-8 on Monday Night Football all time. Ouch. Career night for Tyrone Tracy Jr., the former Iowa and Purdue running back, had 20 carries, 145 yards, and a touchdown, plus 2 catches for 5 on 3 targets. He did leave this game, but they didn't mention what his injury was, so we won't even worry about that. On to the Giants receivers. Darius Slayton, 4 catches, 108 yards on 7 targets. Malik Neighbors, 7 for 71 on 13 targets. This would be Theo Johnson, 3 catches, 35 yards on 4 targets. And Wan'Dale Robinson, 5 for 30 on 5 targets. Greg Joseph, subbing for the injured Graham Gano. He went 4 for 4 on field goals, 48 long, and no extra points. And Matt Haack, H-A-A-C-K, Haack. He had 4 punts averaging 48, longest 66. 1 touchback, and 2 inside the 20-yard line. How about Bobby Okereke? 14 total tackles, half a sack, and a forced fumble. So he did pretty well in the loss for the Giants. Alright. Drew Phillips, 7 tackles. Nick McLeod, 6 tackles. Jason Pinnock, 5 tackles. Aziz Ojulari, 7 tackles and 2 sacks. Brian Burns had 5 tackles and a sack. He was taken off the injury report on Friday. He had a groin and a hamstring, and obviously, as I just read, he played. Okay, Tyler Nubin, 4 tackles. DJ Davidson, 8 tackles. Micah McFadden had 5 tackles and half a sack for the Giants. Total yards, Steelers 426, Giants 394. Passing yards 259 to 237 for Pittsburgh. Rush yards for 167 for Pittsburgh and 157 for New York. The Steelers had 20 first downs, Giants with 17. Giants 5 of 15 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down. Steelers 6 of 13 on third down. 11 penalties, 65 yards for the Giants, 4 sacks taken for 27, 1 lost fumble, 1 interception, and 4 punts. 5 penalties, 50 yards for the Steelers, 4 sacks taken for 19, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 3 punts. Time of possession, New York Giants 30 minutes 42 seconds. Pittsburgh Steelers 29 minutes and 18 seconds. Closing line was Pittsburgh minus 4.5 and the over-under was 40.5. I took the Steelers straight up and against the spread. And give me just a second, I'll be right back. Okay, so this week I went 11-5 in my straight up picks and 7-9 in my ATS picks. So overall, we can actually get out of that. Alright. So my overall spread record through 8 weeks is 78-45. That is a 634 winning percentage. And my spread record this year is 61-60-2, which is a 504 win percentage. I gotta turn my spread numbers around, because those are not that good. Okay, we have one final note of business here, and that's the Week 9 Power Rankings, as we have just finished up the recap. And here are those rankings. The Carolina Panthers stay at number 32 with a 1-7 record. This week they will host the New Orleans Saints. The Tennessee Titans are down 3 spots to number 31 with a 1-6 record, and they host the New England Patriots. Down 7 spots to number 30, and this is probably my biggest drop this week, and that is the aforementioned New Orleans Saints at 2-6. They are at Carolina this week. Down 4 spots to number 29 are the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-6. They play the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati this week. Down a spot to number 28 are the Jacksonville Jaguars at 2-6. And they have a tough game at Philadelphia, who is playing a lot better as of late. Despite losing to the Jets, the New England Patriots move up 4 spots to number 27. I moved them up because you had a lot of teams moving down. The Patriots are 2-6, and they are in Nashville this week to face the Titans. The New York Giants, another example of this, they did lose, but I moved them up because a lot of teams moved down. The Giants are up 3 spots to number 26. They are also 2-6, and they will host the first place Washington Commanders. Up 5 spots to number 25, and yet they moved up because they won, and that's the Cleveland Browns at 2-6. This week they're home to Justin Herbert and the LA Chargers. The Cincinnati Bengals fall 3 spots to number 24 with a record of 3-5, and they're home for the Raiders. Down 3 spots to 23 are the New York Jets at 2-6. Many will argue I should have put them lower, but that's okay. They're hosting the Houston Texans on Thursday Night Football to begin Week 9. Despite losing to the Texans, the Indianapolis Colts actually moved up a couple spots to number 22. They are 4-4 on the season, and they will get the Minnesota Vikings. Easy for me to say. That game is on Sunday Night Football. The Dallas Cowboys are down 3 spots to number 21. They are 3-4. And next up, they visit Atlanta to face Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. The Dolphins did lose, but again, this is a product of other teams moving down. That's why I have the Miami Dolphins up 6 spots to number 20, as dumb as that sounds, with a 2-5 record. They're in Buffalo this week to face the Bills. The Arizona Cardinals are up 3 spots to number 19 at 4-4. They host Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears this week. Up 1 spot to number 18 are the Los Angeles Rams at 3-4. They are in Seattle. Down 2 spots to 17 are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4-4. This week they visit Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. The Denver Broncos are up 1 spot to number 16. They are 5-3. And they are in Baltimore against Lamar and the Ravens. We got planes flying over my house. Kind of shaking the house a little bit. The Seattle Seahawks are 3 spots down to number 15. At 4-4, they will host the LA Rams in what should be a pretty good game. LA's other team, the Chargers, are up 2 spots to number 14. They're at 4-3, and they are in Cleveland. The Chicago Bears, who suffered that traumatizing loss at the hands of the Commanders, hold steady at number 13 with a 4-3 record, and they are at Arizona next week, or this week. Slipping 1 spot to number 12 are the Atlanta Falcons at 5-3, and they will host the struggling Dallas Cowboys. Up 3 spots to number 11 are the San Francisco 49ers at 4-4. They are off this week. And that brings us to our top 10, and the Houston Texans falling 4 spots to number 10 is a product of a couple of teams moving up. And particularly, we'll talk about those 2 teams shortly. The Texans are 6-2, and they will face the Jets at the Meadowlands on Thursday nights. The Minnesota Vikings, who have now dropped back-to-back games, fell 5 spots to number 9 with a 5-2 record. They will host the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday night. Also down 5 spots are the Baltimore Ravens to number 8 with a 5-3 record. Next up for them is Bo Nix and the Broncos. Up 1 spot to number 7 are the Buffalo Bills at 6-2. They will host Tua and the Dolphins next week. Now the next two teams are pretty much the reason why Houston moved down. The Philadelphia Eagles are up 4 spots to number 6 with a 5-2 record, and they will host Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. The Green Bay Packers are also up 4 spots to number 5 with a 6-2 record, and they host the Detroit Lions in my game of the week for week 9. I've already determined that. The Washington Commanders move up 3 spots to number 4 with a 6-2 record. They are in New York this week to face the Giants. The Pittsburgh Steelers go up 2 spots to number 3, 6-2 record. They are off this week. And the top 2 remain the same. The Detroit Lions stay at number 2 at 6-1. And they visit the Packers. And the Kansas City Chiefs once again retain the top spot as the lone unbeaten in the NFL at 7-0. This week they host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that is the week that was. the individual and team statistical numbers from Week 8 of the 2024 NFL season. I told you how I did with my picks, both straight up and against the spread. My straight up picks are good, but we got to work on the spread picks. Because I've had another losing record in that category. I want to make sure we get that turned around soon. And we just read off the power rankings going into week number 9. Alright, you want more football? Stick around, because coming up in just a few minutes, I will be going live again with the Week 10 college football television schedule. This is your programming to the entire weekend in college football. That's coming up shortly, so join me for that. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.